Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Juju Show, episode 41. Joe, it's a light crowd today. It snuck up on me this time. I'm going on holiday tomorrow, and I wasn't fully prepared in getting everyone roped in for this. So it's just you and me, man.
You too.
Are you ready to have some fun?
Yeah, I'm ready.
I'm gonna. My demo is just about cooked because I've been so not ready. My demo has been running as we've been waiting for this button to go through. But let's get started on community news, things to be aware of. And first up is new Juju 2.4.4, which means it's a new point release with some bug fixes for folks. There's some stuff around opening and closing ports with external network, refreshing the AWS instance type. So BD, this one's for you. There's some work around you MAS users out there for supporting partition tagging. So if you've got some bugs and things, you've gotten emails saying they're fix released, they're out there. Go and get your upgrade on. Other release news, the Juju GUI released their new version last week, 2.14.0. So if you remember that the GUI is baked into every Juju deploy. So if you run the command Juju space GUI, you get the GUI. And right now you need to run the command Juju upgrade-GUI in order to get yourself the latest JavaScript browsing experience for Juju. And finally, I wanted to highlight Jeff did a great job. He posted a discourse post, which is some documentation we have around if you're a charm author or you have a bundle, oftentimes deploying it's half the battle. We always say that with operations in Juju, that Juju goes beyond just getting it deployed, that there's always those next steps. And the GUI supports a get started MD markdown file, which allows you as an author to provide what those next steps would be, that feedback. So if I deploy a Kubernetes, what's the next steps to getting my kube control or kubectl command up and working with my new cluster? If I, deploy something with OpenStack, what are my first steps to getting into Horizon and validating and making sure all of my instance types or things are available? So if you have a charm or a bundle that you use a lot, or that that others are using of yours, it's worthwhile to spend a little bit of time thinking about what are those next steps and how can we output those out for the user and make it convenient for them to know how to get going. So add those in. That's great. Let's see. Next up, there's a good discussion going on in discourse around a generic Juju agent. And this has come up a couple times lately, so I thought it was worth kind of talking a little bit about. The idea being that, hey, Juju's written in Go, and in theory, I could, stick this on any machine and should be able to have charms that deploy on any kind of operating system. It's a little bit harder than that, because obviously since Juju wires into the OS to do things like networking config and storage config and, how are we doing things with init and all that. And that could be different from, operating system to operating system, Linux distro to Linux distro. So it's kind of interesting. I'd love to hear from folks out there of where they've thought about using Juju but couldn't because we didn't have canonical baked images that we trusted, that Juju could trust to know were set up in a way that would be productive and could get, we don't want to have a bad Juju experience, but maybe there's room for something else, from some middle ground or whatever out there. So I'd love to kind of hear what folks have been looking at and kind of thinking about with this. I don't know. You ever run across anything, Joe, where you've been like, man, I wish I could use Juju here, but can't do? You have a server rack full of Arch servers or something?
Testing some things on CentOS.
Yeah. And we do support CentOS. I know we have we support it in certain clouds, I think is the big thing. Because again, we have certain image IDs that we trust and know that will provide a same common flat platform for charms to build on top of and to operate. But yeah, your own CentOS machines or whatnot would be interesting.
My use case is usually that I'm building on my Ubuntu machine and trying to deploy to CentOS. And if you have a dev version,
right, as a developer, right, we don't have the full release built thing. So maybe that's a use case for kind of development testing purposes. All right. Well, anyways, I encourage everyone to go jump on the post and provide your feedback. What would help you make life better for you? Speaking of things, I ported an old blog post because Discourse is been a really great place to pull information. And I wanted to highlight that with 2.5 release coming up shortly, like we're heading down to the wire here, that it's great to get feedback and test it. And really using snaps with Juju make it really easy to test things that are in development and then switch back to your stable stuff for your stable infrastructure. And so I ported my blog post over. So if you're looking for how do I switch back and forth between what's in development, what's stable, and what I actually have running or whatnot somewhere else, it's a good post for walking you through that. So encourage folks to just go to Discourse and search for, you know, Juju and snaps, and should get you right where you need to be. Next up, Joe, you put a lot of work into this post I wanted to bring up, which is about manually setting up your network for LXD clustering. Why do I have to do network setup for my cluster?
Well, we touched on this briefly in the last episode. So we had a sort of a happy path with MAS, where we let MAS set up our bridges for LXD, but you might not be running on MAS. And of course, if you run containers on other machines, those need both ingress and egress to get to the applications on them, and for them, the agents on them, to communicate with controllers. So that can be done several ways. You might have statically allocated IPs or be using DHCP. So we want to cover all the use cases so that people can use it in a way that fits their environment. There's been a couple of scenarios fleshed out since that first went up. We're having problems, as you know, with one of them, and it's particular to MAS as well. We can't quite get MAS to give us a bridged DHCP setup on Bionic.
On Bionic, right? Exactly. Yeah. So there's something quirky going on there. We got to poke at some more. But if you are looking to use clustering, and you're like, hey, how would I, make sure that my containers have the right network access to be able to function the way I expect them to? This is a great rundown of various permutations and combinations of that configuration and setup for you. And finally, in community news, I wanted to highlight that the team has done some good work in the 2.5, in the kind of the beta space, the upcoming code space, around the Kubernetes charms that you can write and deploy. And you can now do that on GKE, which means that you can deploy charms for applications on Kubernetes using GKE, which is their what do they call it? Google Container Engine, I think is what it's short for, which is basically their hosted Kubernetes product. So if you don't want to run your own Kubernetes cluster and you're like, hey, I'm going to offload that work to Google, that's something else you can play with and try out. And it's good to see. There'll be others coming. I know that there's going to work on the AWS container platform as well as the Azure one. So I expect to see that stuff coming as part of that feature coming in 2.5. So if you want to run your own Kubernetes cluster, by all means, you can even Juju deploy canonical Kubernetes to get your cluster up and running, and then create models and deploy containerized workloads on top of that. Let's see. That's the news. So let's get into our main topic. And our main topic actually is something Joe here has worked on a whole lot. Upgrading your series of your Ubuntu infrastructure. I put all the disclaimers in there. It's Ubuntu infrastructure. All right. Why don't you talk about what this is while I get my screen share set up?
Okay, well, there's a requirement, obviously, to keep the series of your host machines current. So this is a mechanism by which you can pause temporarily the function of your agents running on a particular machine. It's done machine by machine. And then go onto the machine, run, what is it? It's a do
release upgrade.
Do release upgrade, case being from, let's say, Xenial to Bionic, and then restart all your agents and have them come up perfectly operational, upgraded charm versions, etc. So there's an important case here, which would be trusty-to-xenial, which means that you're going from upstart to system D as your init system. So obviously, part of this process is rewriting all the service units of your agents to run on the new init system, and it seems to be working pretty well so far.
Yeah, so let's put this in some concrete examples here. This is my go-to demo for this. I've been playing with it and such. Is I have a model, and on that model, I've deployed Apache 2 and Cinder. Cinder being an OpenStack component, and the OpenStack team in particular is interested in this so that they can help you get your OpenStack running from one version of Ubuntu to the next. So I only deployed these two. The Cinder's blocked because it says, hey, I'm missing parts of my OpenStack. Where's my database and my identity backend and such? And, yeah, okay, that's fine. We don't care about that for now. For our purposes, this is enough to go off of. So we've got two machines, and notice that both of those machines are Ubuntu Xenial. So this is not 1804, but 1604. And so, hey, you know what? We want to get off of that before Xenial's end of life, which you have a ways to go for right now. There's still several years before Xenial's end of life, but you know, I want to get my stuff onto Bionic. So I want to upgrade it. Now, I want to clarify like that this only upgrades the Ubuntu OS. We're not upgrading Juju. We're not upgrading the units or the code running for Juju. We're not updating, you know, basically anything, just the machine's operating system, and really that do release upgrades kind of the key. So what I'll do is I'll say I want to upgrade series, and there's two steps to upgrading. There's a prepare step, and there's a complete step. When you prepare, what you're doing is telling Juju, and Juju will tell the charm, hey, get ready to have your operating system kind of yanked out from under you. Charms may do things like remove a PPA that they have added currently that they need to change or update for a different operating system. They may, not an operating system, but a different Ubuntu version. They may do things like commenting from Xenial to Bionic, I believe, is we defaulted to Python 3, or was that actually in Xenial? I'm blanking on that.
Could have been Xenial, I think.
Yeah, and so, but maybe you have to clean out a virtual environment for code that is no longer going to be valid when the new series comes up. There's basically infinite number of things a charm may wish to do to prepare for a series upgrade. So we're gonna upgrade series and say let's prepare machine 0, and we're gonna prepare it to go to Bionic. This is what I get. Because the feature flag's not gone yet. All right, let's try that again. So this is obviously kind of a little bit of a hairy situation. So we're going to be very explicit and verbose about what's going on so that you understand where we are in the process. This is one of the few times in Juju where you have kind of two commands to get one job done. You can't just Juju deploy with config in one command and it'll go off and do it all. It's only going to do kind of step 1, and then you have to come back to step 2. So this is going to be a bit verbose. So it's going to tell us that, hey, we're going to upgrade this machine. Any units on this machine will be, and here are the units we found. We found Cinder 0. Obviously, being a machine-affected thing, if there's subordinates or Hulk smashed multiple things on the same machine, this could be a list of things that are affected. And I say, I understand. I know what I'm doing. Let's get this party started. Right off the bat, you'll see that for charm authors out there, and I want to call to action for all you charmers, is there's a new hook that you can write to help prepare for this. So Juju will give you a chance to execute any steps you need by triggering this hook. So you can go in and write out the code and the steps you need. This will be done for each application affected. So everyone gets their chance to get ready for the upcoming upgrade. And this takes a second. There we go. And here we acknowledge that everything was completed. And as Joe noted, sometimes Juju will need to do things itself, like make sure that it's ready for a new init system or whatnot. And so we'll state out that we're all ready to go. So one thing to highlight here, Juju will not run do release upgrade. Because of different environments, we honestly, you know, people running large production infrastructure, we don't know what steps or when is the right time to run do release upgrade on the machines. too much for us to try to read the mind and get it all right. So what we do is say, that's a manual step. When you're done with the upgrade, we give you the command run, which is basically complete on machine 0. So from here, what I would do is I would SSH to the machine. So I can even use Juju SSH for that. Yay. And, you know, let's apt update. And after apt updates, let's do it. Do release upgrade. And it's going to check for a new Ubuntu release, do a bunch of work. Oh, Bionic tar, caching. Yay. This is all right. It does some stuff to protect my SSH connection because the SSH package itself may be updated and it may attempt to restart and reclose that port there. So yeah. And from here on out, again, there's nothing Juju here. This is all just the normal do release upgrade process you would hit on anything else that you wanted to run or operate. So good old fashioned cooking in the kitchen. I've prepared an upgraded model here. So let's go to my upgraded model and go look at it. And here you can see I've got a Cinder 0, and I can tell you that I've already SSH to this and run and completed do release upgrade. And after do release upgrade, it says you need to reboot to get your new kernel. And I've done that. So, oh, not sudo. So now, upgrade series machine 0 complete. So I'm going to say, all right, you know, how about if I get the commands right? That would be helpful. How about if I complete on machine 0? This is now the second stage. It's going to start it. Again, charm authors, you get a post upgrade hook. This is where if you cleaned out a virtual environment in Python 2 in the prepare step, you might rebuild that virtual environment with Python 3 in the complete step. And because the hook is running when the machine's been upgraded, you can do things like detect what version of Ubuntu the machine is and perform the right steps. So if you needed to re-add a PPA, you could detect what series you're on and add the correct PPA in your charm hook and everything. So lots of room for charm authors to provide that operational expertise on what's needed to upgrade an application from one version of Ubuntu to another. And there we go. The hook completed, the machine's completed, and everything is hunky-dory. So let's go back. Let's figure this out. Voila! My machine is now bionic. Woohoo! I'm on the latest and greatest. I feel like an awesome, awesome person. That's the feature in a nutshell. I don't know. What do you think, Joe? Anything I missed?
Is it worth talking about leadership?
I'm debating on that. So if your charms implement leadership, and this is I'm tempted to not, because it gets into the fuzzy space of leadership was intended for charms to determine who's the boss charm. But people have kind of leveraged it to be who's the leader of a an HA application. And in that case, obviously, when you have something HA, one of the reasons why you target this machine by machine is that the idea being is in an HA environment, you would be very strategic in how you went about upgrading your infrastructure. You would pick certain ones to do first. Oftentimes, we're finding, working with the OpenStack team, they're starting with the leaders of their application. So if they've got 3 MySQLs in an HA environment with failover of some sort, they would upgrade the leader first. And their big thing is that when you reboot a machine due to the release upgrade, it may appear that it's down and cause leadership or voting to happen to go elect a new leader. And oftentimes folks don't want that. They're like, look, I'm in control. I know what's going on. Just hold tight. And so toward that end, we're actually pinning leadership to basically not allowing new elections while things are being upgraded. Once you're complete, everything's back to normal. You get normal failover and stuff, but there's this window of kind of time to be careful while you're actually upgrading any of the units of an application that might be in a scaled out HA manner.
So you didn't want to talk about it, but you explained it in full. Nice.
Well, I felt trapped. I couldn't leave you hanging now.
Well, yeah, but the story point there is that we've taken care of all of that for you. It won't change on you.
Exactly. And so what will be really interesting is you can easily see that the next version of the OpenStack charms will basically have different instructions on how to upgrade your OpenStack, leveraging this new upgrade series feature. And they'll actually walk you through how to go about getting your OpenStack from trusty to Xenial, or from Xenial to Bionic, and to Bionic to whatever might come in the future. So this helps you keep your large clouds running while keeping up with well-maintained versions of Ubuntu. And watch out for that end of life cycle, right? Don't want to get stuck with something end of life. All right. I think we'll wrap that up. What I did want to do, pull in one last thing. So charm authors out there, call to action. Update your charms and support this feature so that people can upgrade and use your software over time. And the other call to action I have for charm authors is, and I'll probably talk about this in the next show, there's a feature and there's a link in the show notes to the specification and the conversation around allowing charms to include customized LexD profile bits that they need to function. And so, again, charm authors, it's a great time to track that dev channel of the snap for Juju, to play with the in-development feature, to keep your charms up to date so that when 2.5 goes out and we've got these nice new features, there are charms ready to go supporting it, and it kind of tightens that window for end users. So now's a great time for charm authors to be playing with the new bits of Juju and making sure that their charms are up to date and ready to go. So if you have any questions on any of that, there are links in the show notes to discourse topics for both of these features, and encourage everyone to get involved in the conversation and to try it out, play with it, give us some feedback. We love us some feedback. Right, Joe? Feedback.
We do.
All right. With that, I'm going to go and start packing for my holiday weekend. And everyone else, I hope you have a great day and a great week. See you next time.